This is the OTB Television Network, a service of Capital District Off-Track Betting.
Good morning and welcome to Loose on the Lead for Sunday morning. Seth Merrill from Equidaily.com, Steve Bick from Sirius and XM's At the Races. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning, Seth.
Big day of racing. We'll talk all about a big day of racing yesterday. Obviously, another big day of racing today. And before we go along, I just wanted to remind people there is an $83,000 Pick 6 carryover at Aqueduct. But I also wanted to note a couple of those jackpot bets around the country are kind of getting up there. It's over $500,000 in the Pick 6 jackpot at Rainbow Six down at Gulfstream, and the Pick 5, the Black Gold Pick 5 at Fairgrounds is up to $276,000. So those bets, if folks are interested, and those jackpot bets are those single winner type of bets. So, but they're starting to get up there where it's becoming a little bit interesting, I think. All right, I did want to touch on before we really get started. Note that, and I talked a little bit about it on the Handicappers Report before, the Jockey Club Racing Series kicks off today. Fox Sports 1, the Don Handicap, and I did want to note, our friends, we've had them on the show plenty of times, Andy Serling, Richard Migliori, picked as part of the team, so hats off to them.
And of course, this is the beginning of an execution that the Jockey Club initiated as part of the Jockey Club Roundtable, results that were presented as part of the McKinsey report, more continuity, more visibility for the sport, whether it's the NBC Saturdays at Saratoga series, things like that. This is the next level of presentation from the Jockey Club. We applaud the effort. They're paying for it. And any amount of racing, I know some people feel that there's kind of a herky-jerky schedule for this first 9 broadcasts. You know, today it starts with the handicap division with the Don. Then they're going to do probably an in-studio presentation of the World Cup in March. Then they'll do little 3-year-olds with the bluegrass. Then a lot of turf in the middle of the summer. You got to give them a little bit of leeway here as they get started because they had to take what really was available to get going. Next year they're talking about 20 weekend broadcasts, and then the year after as many as 30 or more. So the Fox Sports 1, which is a new network, obviously, they get a chance to showcase racing. They've promised that they want to make it about the wagering in no small amount. And when you talk about Andy Serling's involvement in this, as well as Simon Bray, that's what it's about. And I think you're going to see a lot more about bet structure and the handicapping maxims and how they apply than we usually get from national broadcasts that are all about the up close and personal, warm and fuzzy stories. Not that we won't get some of those, but Greg Wolf, a very accomplished presenter as the host, Andy and Simon Bray to do handicapping discussion, Rich Migliori as the jockey anchor, and then, of course, Alyssa Ali, who does a nice job in front of the microphone in Chicago. She's going to be the reporter. So a very nice team of 5, and looking forward very much to Fox kicking off the Jockey Club Tour.
And we had Jason Wilson on Racing Across America a couple of weeks ago talking specifically about this series, and brought it up because it was about the day, I think it was the day after Steve Christ wrote his column that said, you know, the series, it'd be interesting if they focused a little more on the older division. And he said, just essentially what you said. He said, we wanted to get what was there and get this started. Next year we'll pop in and it will expand it and get maybe a little more of the kind of races people are expecting.
And Rich Migliori is going to join us before we wrap up today. He'll be in the 4th segment today, and we'll check in as well down at Gulfstream with Mike Welsh, get a little bit of a report about yesterday, but also anticipate today's exciting card that includes the Don Handicap. And really, the closer you look at the Don, the better it gets. It is a terrific set of older horses, including, of course, the 3-year-old champion in Will Take Charge, starting his 4-year-old season. And I think he's plenty vulnerable in this spot. Looking forward very much as well to talk to Dave Grenig about the biggest off-the-racetrack news story, the break that came on Thursday about Belmont Stakes Day becoming just really second only to Breeders' Cup Saturday. A bold stroke and a daring concept. Don't know what the complete fallout might be. We'll talk about it with Dave Grenig.
And also news from the past few days, the numbers for January came out, national handle numbers. The handle down, I would say it's essentially flat. The handle number's down 0.23%, which is essentially flat. The bad aspect there is maybe the racing days went up. So handle down with racing days up. And Steve, I think part of the explanation of that is and I will say, given what happened in December with the horrible decrease, I think this is good news, but you would think, with more racing days, you don't want any kind of a decrease. But I still think the weather played into that, because I think, particularly you look down at fairgrounds, you lost a lot of turf racing. So field sizes decrease in some of these weather situations. That brings the handle down, and I think the weather plays into a lot of the explanation here.
It always does. And Gulfstream, in fact, probably a part of the equation too. Their numbers are down on a widespread basis, and they had, for the first time, some serious bad weather and off-the-turf days. And it's been years, really, since Gulfstream had any of that. So the numbers, as you say, essentially flat. Speaking of which, weather situation, Turfway's already canceled for today, as has Oaklawn for a 4th straight day. It is a nightmare in Hot Springs, as the track is basically frozen no matter what they do to try to harrow. So people are losing training, they're losing starts. Now obviously this will benefit Oaklawn in terms of field size over the next 10 days to 2 weeks as soon as the weather breaks there. And it's so funny, I said on radio, Oaklawn usually loses days in January, but it's been this spate of rough weather has just hurt everybody. So we'll go from there. You play the hand that you get dealt.
Yeah, I said it this week on television that it's really east of the Mississippi, north and south, weather has been a real factor so far this winter season. Up here it's the cold and snow, but the cold, unseasonable, not as cold as we are, but unseasonable down south, Oaklawn, Fairgrounds, wet weather. Over in Florida as well, some wet weather and some unseasonably cold weather. But Fairgrounds, again, they've lost some races, but more importantly, just they've lost a lot of turf racing down there. Our friend Jenny Reese had Strike Impact entered again on Friday. They couldn't get that one to the turf, so scratched again. I feel bad for them, and that's a great example of what I think a lot of folks are facing. There are these smaller barns that really you can't travel around. I saw Mike Maker today had one come over from Fairgrounds to Gulfstream, I'm sure, to get to the turf. Well, some of the smaller folks can't, they don't have the resources to travel around, so you go down to the Fairgrounds with a turf horse. You've been up against it this winter. I do want to tip our cap, though, before we move on to one training story worth noting. Kim Hammond brought her up the past few weeks as she's been right on the cusp of winning her 2000th career win, and she did it yesterday at Turfway. She does it with a horse named Big Smooth, gets it done at 8-1, but that is Kim Hammond's 2000th career win, which makes her the first North American female trainer to hit that milestone. So absolutely,
nice.
hats off to her. Also yesterday, Pool 2 of the Kentucky Derby Future Wager closed. What's notable there, we'll take a look at some of the prices as well, but what's notable there was the handle took a real hit. The handle so far, combined with the win and the exacta, was $380,000 compared to last year. It was, what do we have? Well over 600,000. So it took the better part of a 50% hit there. We were talking a little bit before we went on the air. I'm wondering if the early close, which is different this year, which makes sense and is kind of fun. They want to close before we hit those 3-year-old stakes and make people make a decision. But I'm wondering if people are still catching up to that and used to getting to look at those 3-year-old races and betting on Sunday. But they closed yesterday at 6 o'clock.
Well, they're doing that this year so that when you look at horses like Candy Boy, the 4, and Midnight Hawk, the 13, about 45 minutes or so after the pool closes, Candy Boy beats Midnight Hawk and Cheeto in the Bob Lewis. Well, If the pool is still open or if it closes on Sunday, Candy Boy is probably that 19-1 and Midnight Hawk is the 30-1. So it didn't basically poison the well in terms of people getting a good price. And if you got locked in at 32-1 on Candy Boy, you got to be feeling pretty good. At the same time, you also got to be feeling pretty good if you watched this show last week and you heard Gary Stevens tell you point blank that this was his Derby horse and that there was every reason to think that Candy Boy's coming out party was going to be in this Bob Lewis. This was a very professional performance. He had to wait a little bit, and then Stevens eased out. Then when he asked, Candy Boy just basically inhaled Midnight Hawk and Cheat 2. And Midnight Hawk, we'll see if he's a middle distance horse. Cheat 2 certainly stretched out beautifully for Baffert, who runs 2-3 in here. But just as Sadler was hoping, and as you heard maybe Jay Privman on my show talk about Friday, Sadler is ahead of the game. He had built-in days in the training cycle so that perhaps if he missed any time with Candy Boy, because usually it's rainy in January at Santa Anita, but he didn't miss any time. So he is absolutely ahead of the curve. And this is clearly a horse that goes right near the top with Shared Belief on the bench with a quarter crack issue that is not healing and is increasingly questioning his potential to make Santa Anita Derby or anything else. Clearly, you've got some new faces to think about on the West Coast. The San Vicente comes up, then the San Felipe. The West Coast, who started behind the East Coast in terms of this class of horses last year, they've caught up. And Candy Boy, very impressive yesterday. Some of the other interesting prices, I thought Intense Holiday at 69-1 off the Impossible Post in the Holy Bull. That's a terrific price. And Pletcher and Starlight, if they hold him together and move him forward, what's wrong with Intense Holiday at $140? After that, there's a couple of interesting numbers. How about Vickers in Trouble really getting no respect? 42-1 for the winner of the LeCompte. And the way he did it, running away from everybody in a mid-90s buyer, I thought that was a bit of an overlay.
I took some shots, including Candy Boy. I took a Candy Boy
shot. Look at you with that candy-eating grin.
I was very modest tickets. I took like 4 or 5. I tossed in Matterhorn, just a Pletcher horse to have in the mix, and I tossed in Tonalist too.
Oh, absolutely,
Tonalist.
Tonalist.
Getting a little bit of buzz from his camp, and a 48-1 looked pretty good. So I had 3 or 4. Again, very modest little shots, but after the race out in Southern California, I was kind of happy with at least one of them.
Let's do this. Dave Grenig is standing by, so we'll go to Dave Grenig. We'll take our break right here, and we'll talk about yesterday's stakes because Mike Welch will be with us, we think, at the bottom of the hour. Mike has got a busy day there with Don Handicap Day. So we'll talk about the races, including the Bob Lewis, as well as the San Marcos, and, of course, the stunning upset of Game On Dude off the board at 2-5, and the Bridge Jumpers take the proverbial bath. Let's take a break. We'll come back. Dave Grenig of the Racing Forum to talk about the absolutely daring maneuver of taking the Met Mile and the Ogden Phipps and the Acorn, putting them all on Belmont Day for the second richest day in racing in the United States. Back after this on Loose on the Lead. This is Steve Beck. Join me Tuesday through Saturday here on OTB TV for At the Races, my Sirius XM daily news magazine of the thoroughbred industry. Handicapping, interviews, analysis, everything you could want. 6 a.m. OTB TV.
Go Zephyr kicking clear, and Go Zephyr is pulling away impressively.
Hysterical Lady, Ginger Punch to win it.
And it's Wilco in front, and he's going to pull off a huge upset here.
But it's Round Pond going on to take the distaff.
Awesome again. Sire of 10 Grade 1 winners, 4 Breeders' Cup champions, and 4 multimillionaires, standing at Adena Springs.
It's more than just a sports bar. It's Stadium Cafe. Located at 389 Broadway in Saratoga, it's the place to be for great times and great food. Their menu features everything from gourmet entrees to your favorite wraps and sandwiches. Or maybe you just want to grab a beer and catch the game. So what can be better than that? How about 2 Stadium Cafes? There's also the Westside Stadium, right up the road at 112 Congress Street. Same great menu, same great service. Whether you're hanging at the bar or just relaxing outside on their spacious covered patio, you'll always leave knowing you'll be back again.
We love, above all, the staff. We love Dave Harmon, and the food is fantastic.
Not one, but two. 112 Congress Street, 389 Broadway. Guaranteed to be a home run.
Missed one of our TV shows? No worries. Now you can catch all your favorite programs online. Simply log on to CapitalOTV.com and click on the YouTube link at the bottom of the homepage. And look for our new podcast coming soon. CapitalOTV.com. Log on today.
We're back on Loose on the Lead. Dave Grennig joining us from the Daily Racing Forum. And clearly, Dave, a major announcement and a major new idea that NYRA wants to try on Belmont Day as the Metropolitan Handicap and a handful of other stakes make for an $8 million day. Give us your reaction.
Well, you know where you're going to be. If you like racing, and if you like New York racing and you're in the New York area, you know where you're going to be June 7th, 2014. You're going to be at Belmont Park, or you're going to be at your local OTB, or you're right in front of your television set with your computer betting. I mean, it's a day that you can't, if you're a racing fan, it's a day that you can't miss, and that's what they wanted to make sure was going to be the case. If there's no Belmont, if there's no Triple Crown on the line, and if the Derby winner and or Preakness winner doesn't show up, and the Belmont is just, as I like to call it, the 11th race on a 13-race card in that situation, there's going to be several others there for you to sink your teeth into. And they wanted to make a splash, and they certainly did.
This is kind of a concept that you can easily identify with Martin Panza. Martin, famous for crafting some different kinds of ideas on the West Coast and making the most of the situation that he faced at Hollywood the last several years. Of course, he also created the fabulous American Oaks that really became a standard on the card out on the calendar out there for 3-year-old fillies. It drew international horses, and there is some new wrinkles to this whole weekend. And really, Dave, it feels like the concept is to have as much of an impact on the third leg of the Triple Crown Day that the Preakness card has and the Derby Oaks cards have. And it seems like the opportunity to make a concentration over the 3 days, because there's also this new Intercontinental to be run on Sunday. It seems like they really want to have as big a weekend as Pimlico and Churchill do.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really more about the day, the Saturday, and then they give you a little something on Friday so that the True North is now Friday with a reduced purse of $250 from the 400 when it was on Saturday. They give you this 2-mile turf race, which to me would be my only criticism of this whole. I would have two criticisms. One would be the 2-mile turf race. We just don't. It's just not a race that is viewed as a great race in America. And I understand you want to draw some European interest, but you know what? Royal Ascot is right. It's the next week after Belmont, and I just don't think you're going to get the European interest. I mean, the only other criticism would be you run 13 stakes races. 2-time horse of the year is a turf miler, and there is nothing really for him. I would have made the Jaipur a mile and maybe bumped it up, taking that $175,000 bonus that they've attached to the Brooklyn if you've won some marathon race, 1 mile 3/16 or longer race. I would have maybe thrown that into the Jaipur and see if you could, lure Wise Dan. Now maybe Wise Dan, they talked about trying dirt. Maybe the Met Mile attracts him. I don't know. That would be a huge score and shut me up quite quickly if they were able to attract him there. But it's really about the day. That Saturday, is going to be huge. If you get Beholder and Princess of Silmar in the fifth for $1 million, why wouldn't you get those two to show up? That would be a must-see race. And the Manhattan will attract an even better group of turf horses, perhaps, with that pot. So it's really about Saturday. The Friday and Sunday, to me, don't do it for me.
Well, and of course, the races, so that everybody understands, for those of you that haven't had a chance to catch up on this, the Met, the Ogden Phipps, the Acorn, the Brooklyn, and the Jaipur are the 5 stakes moved to the Belmont Stakes card. There will also be 3 allowances. So very clearly a 13-race card for Belmont Stakes Day. And then on the Friday, the True North, as Dave mentioned, the institution of the new 2-mile Belmont Gold Cup. And the Brooklyn has a bonus attached to it for any horses that have won at 1 mile 3/16. I think, 175,000 bonus?
that would be the bonus. The base purse is $500, so you get about $300. And I'm also interested, and I meant to ask him this about because he wants to pay significant money to horses that finish 6th, 7th, and 8th, so that to attract a bigger field. I wonder, and I don't know if this will have to do this legislatively, not it's changed the percentages that are given out. I'm not sure about that, but there is a $175,000 bonus. If, let's say your will take charge and you've won a mile and a quarter race, like the Travers, and you want to show up in the Brooklyn.
Got to mention, too, for those, Dave, that right away said, oh, my gosh, there'll be no other racing all weekend the rest of the summer. I sat down with the calendar. There seems like for the other 10 weekends during the Belmont Spring Summer, the Fort Marcy, the Beaugay, the Peter Pan, the Vagrancy, the Sheep's Head Bay, the Sands Point. There is, of course, the showcase day for the Big Apple New York Bred Day, the Hill Prince, the Bed of Roses, the Mother Goose, the Victory Ride, the Poker, the Suburban, and the Dwyer. I think there's enough other stakes to fill out the rest of the meet.
Yeah, basically all they did here was take Met Mile Day, which they have spent the last couple of years building up. I mean, and moved it to those races to Belmont Day. They really didn't affect any of the other Saturdays out there. And I would imagine that, and he's also going to implement, I think they'll talk about it later this week when they announce their full schedule, the Belmont Derby and the Belmont Oaks.
Right.
Those, I think they're going to be races, obviously, for 3-year-olds on the grass. And my guess is he'll make Memorial Day the prep races for those races that are on July 5th. That's just my guess. I'm thinking like it might be a Sands Point, a Hill Prince with beefed up purses as a prelude to the July 5th card. But going back to the Met Mile, the only thing is they've spent some energies trying to improve the Met Mile Day, and they've been successful. Just going back 2 years ago, in 2011, the attendance was 91,44, total handle 13 million. In this past year, the attendance was 11,664 with total handle of 16.1 million. So they had the old regime, so to speak, put an effort to build up that Mile Day, and now this regime is like kind of throwing that a little bit to the side to make Belmont Day an even bigger day. So it'll be interesting to see what the business is on that Mile Day, because I don't think it'll be 16.1 million.
Well, and that's, I suppose, where this is all going to shake out. And in your discussions with Chris Kay and with Martin Panza, in terms of the handle concept and what this offers and how the impact, obviously there's going to be just an outlandish set of wagering opportunities in here, including probably 3 pick 4s, the early pick 5, and everything else, probably a huge guaranteed pick 6, I imagine. Talk about those questions and what the anticipation is.
Well, those announcements will come at a later date, as will the announcement of what the pricing will be, which I also expect to be, well, you used the word outlandish, maybe in that ballpark. Look, the card isn't changing in terms of what they can offer you and what, they had 13 races last year, except the late pick 4 ended with, New York Bred Claimers on the grass, as opposed to the $100,000 allowance races that you mentioned earlier. I would imagine you'll still have the $1 billion guaranteed pick 4 pool. There might be some kind of guaranteed pick 6. You'll have the 3 pick 4s. The wagering menu, I don't think will change too dramatically, except with the exception of there was no pick 5 at this point in time, in the spring of 2013. But there will be, there might be some other changes though in terms of pricing for simulcast outlets, which is another big component to this thing. You want to make a day that people won't market you when you charge the simulcast fees higher, and also the pricing for tickets and admission. I think there'll be significant increases in those as well.
Well, and you actually yesterday or Friday were broaching that topic, and to quote from your Twitter feed, Derby tickets, as a 2-day package, about $350 a day. The cheapest sit-down for Preakness, $150. Belmont has always notoriously been a crazy bargain. $45 for the cheapest seat, up to $120. And then, of course, for general admission, the Derby is up to $50, Preakness $25. Last year for Belmont, $10 into the building, $20 into the clubhouse. And, of course, there were Triple Crown tries, not in that far past where you could get into the building for $5.
Correct, and you have to know that if they weren't ready to announce what the prices would be on Friday when they announce this big day, that you do know and expect increases will be coming. Just how high they are, I don't know, but I'm going to have a hard time believing that you're going to be able to get into the plant for less than $25 and expect it to be much higher. But I don't know that I have a hard time also thinking that the cheapest ticket will be $350. I think that it's not as great a day as it is. It's still not the Derby, and they do pile the Derby in with the Oaks in that package there. We really don't have a package. I mean, Friday will be a nice card, but it won't be an Oaks.
Yeah, and they're walking a fine line, too, because the first year you don't want to price it so that you get a bad crowd. That is a very fine line you got to walk there. If you raise the price enough, now you deter the crowd that you're trying to draw. And so it's going to be very interesting to see where they do come up with a price for this.
You're right, because the bottom line is still that day does still hinge. The popularity and interest of that day still does hinge whether there's a Triple Crown at stake or not. And if they have one, it almost sells itself. And if they don't, you have to have something to sell. Now, great, they're going to have a great card, no question about it. But if they price you too high out of the deal, then you might just stay home and bet on your computer, or you might just go to your OTB or whatever track you're closest to. Whereas, let's say you're in Jersey, and if you don't want to spend the money to be at Belmont because there's no Triple Crown at stake, you'll be happy to go to Monmouth and just pay the whatever they charge you to get in the plan and bet from there. So you're right. They can't get too crazy here because the day still hinges on Triple Crown at stake, and you're not going to know that until May 17th.
And that was one of the first things I thought when I saw this. They're doing this hoping to bump up a crowd, and I thought, well, does that mean it's now a foregone conclusion that we're going to have a Triple Crown opportunity this year, and they wouldn't have to do it?
That's what will happen. There'll be a Triple Crown. Speaking of betting on the computer, Dave, while we have you, and I know that Matt Hegarty, your colleague at Daily Racing Forum, is following the story very closely, particularly with Churchill. But as we get to this latest drop dead date, of course, NYRA did not take the future wager, and that clearly could have impacted what seems like softish numbers. What's the latest that you hear on the negotiations to get Churchill to accept a rate increase on the NYRA signal, a rate that everybody else in the industry has already accepted?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens tomorrow. I have to think that at the end of business tomorrow, that would be the end of it in terms of the extensions would end tomorrow, because they've basically been working without one since January 1st, so now you're almost 6 weeks into the year, and granted, now we don't race again after tomorrow until Friday, so they'd have a couple of extra days to dot the I's and cross the T's, but I can't imagine that this is going to drag on much longer without some sort of resolution. That come Friday, if you go to Churchill Down, you're part of the Churchill syndicate. If you're not, if you don't have a deal with NYRA, then you're not going to get signals come Friday. I have to believe that's the case, and I really don't know where these things stand right now. Both sides have been fairly tight-lipped. You would hope that these little mini extensions that they've given, at least lately now, lead you to believe that there's some progress being made, but it's hard to know. I mean, NYRA right now is not in a tower of strength. I mean, the cards that are being offered right now are not ones that you necessarily want to, that these outlets are dying to pay more for, and it really aren't going to be that way until we get into March, if that, and maybe April. So they're not dealing from a power of strength at this moment.
Well, and of course, the thing is more or less a negotiation in its entirety. And what is fairly telling about this whole process, Dave, is the fact that every other platform and every other simulcast partner readily took this. There was no hang-up with ExpressBet, with TVG, with anybody else. And it doesn't come as a complete surprise that Churchill is the most difficult of these negotiating partners.
No, they like to play hardball, no question about it. And NYRA, Chris Kay has gotten that introduction rather quickly, I'm sure, since he's taken over last summer. So we'll see how much longer they're willing to play ball for. And I would also have to think this will be reciprocal. That if NYRA doesn't send its signal to the fairgrounds, I'm going to suggest that Fairgrounds, which isn't having a great meet at the moment, they're not going to be, that signal's not going to be coming to NYRA in their outlets, and you don't necessarily want to lose that money. I think we saw last Monday when Beulah canceled how great they did with Beulah, with NYRA and Parks canceled Beulah Open. They handled like $900,000, some ridiculous amount like that they haven't normally seen. So there is strength in having the New York bettors bet on your product, and I got to think that Churchill doesn't want to lose that money either.
Well, and NYRA looking to create something very special, kind of a mid-season Breeders' Cup with this super-sized Belmont Stakes Day. Dave Grenig, always appreciate it. Thanks very much.
Okay, we'll save you a seat on June 7th.
There you go. Standing room only. And it'll be standing room only, certainly, at Gulfstream Park today as we turn to Dave's colleague, Mike Welsh. A second big day, the Jockey Club Tour on Fox kicking off. Mike Welsh, good morning.
Morning.
Mike, before we talk about today's terrific feature and the co-feature, because the turf race, the Grade 1 Gulfstream Park Turf Handicap, is equally outstanding and being a little bit overshadowed, let's get a quick review of yesterday where Paranda took advantage of a questionable pace scenario to wire the field for Rodolfo Garcia.
Yeah, kudos to them. I mean, they realized that they had the advantage, and they took advantage of it. And I'd spoken to Rodolfo earlier in the week and asked him if that was going to be his strategy, and he just said at the time that he was going to leave it up to Jose. And he told me that he went in the paddock, and the only thing he said to Jose was, "There's not a lot of speed in here." And Jose got the message, and sure enough, she went to the lead and put him to sleep and got the victory. That this horse is awful good, and she loves this turf course. So, maybe she beats them anyway. But with that advantage, it was easy pickings for her.
Got to make a note, too, that in the first start in North America, Bill Mott, who is really rolling right about now, the Juddmonte filly, Riposte, a little bit further back maybe than Joel Rosario would probably like to have been if he had a chance to do it again. She came running and clearly is going to be a factor as the year unfolds.
Yeah, I mean, she doesn't want to go a mile and an eighth. That's too short for her anyway. They went slow enough early that it kept her in the race and let her use her class to close at the second. But I think you'll hear more from her as she stretches out to a mile and a quarter and probably ultimately a mile and a half.
While we're talking about turf fillies and mares, let's mention the return of Kitten's Point. I was going to give her one, Mike, and I looked pretty silly when she came running and just gobbled up that field under Edgar Prado.
Yeah, I thought the same thing, but she was really motoring down the center of the course. It was a huge effort and another big day for Graham Motion.
Absolutely, and while we're on the topic, let's get a couple of other quick notes. Miss Bessie Lou continues her winning way. We'll see if her stablemate husband, Mr. Bessie Lou, can break his maiden today. But Miss Bessie Lou, I think, is now ready to move into stakes company.
Yeah, she'd already proved herself in stakes company last time with a kind of a tough trip. And, she really had to grind it out yesterday. Chris Clement's horse is a nice filly and maybe ultimately the better of the two. But Miss Bessie Lou did have the advantage of a couple of races under her belt, the fitness advantage, and that probably was the difference in the last 16th of a mile.
I mentioned Bill Mott, and he's going very well. The Windstar filly, Tourist, breaks her maiden earlier on the card, and it featured a very scary chain reaction accident as Roger Atfield's horse drops. Jeremy's Song goes down and falling over. We've got Barley Twist and Recall Dynaformer, and it seems like all the jocks are okay. Abidil Jean, who the kid, doesn't matter how many times he falls in a day, he comes back and rides.
Sorry, I got a call on the other line while you were talking. I missed the last part of that.
No, just talking about the spill and about.
I thought Jose Contreras was going to come back and ride today, but apparently not. I don't know. Maybe his injury was a little more serious than first thought, but I believe he's off his mounts already today. But the others, the others seem fine. I guess I saw Emma Jane Wilson tweeted something that she's a little sore last night, but a couple of days rest and she'll be fine.
What do we know about the horses? It looked like
I didn't hear any more other than the Atfield horse. I guess was put down. I think the others are okay, but I couldn't say.
Let's also fold in Falling Sky, who George Weaver has recrafted into a one-turn horse. He was spectacular, a 104 buyer running away in the Gulfstream Park Sprint.
Yeah, he ran like a crazy horse yesterday. I mean, once he made the lead, it certainly changed the dynamic of the race. I surely thought that, the Calder horse would be on the lead, and when he wasn't, that might have taken his game away. There was some trouble in the back of the pack. How about Narvaez running second at about 100,000 to 1 or whatever it was, 130, I guess, was the actual price. He ran past some pretty good horses there to be second, so it was a surprisingly good effort on his part, but the winner dominated. There was no doubt about it. It was a one-horse race, and I think Falling Sky's performance yesterday, anybody who was waiting to bet Revolutionary today, probably going to get about a point less now that Falling Sky's line is in his PPs from last week.
We can shift to that and talk about today's action. We should also go ahead.
If we're going to talk about today, Mike, I did Gulfstream on the handicapping show earlier. I wanted to check with you on a first-time starter that I'm using today. Had been working over at Gulfstream, so I'm wondering if you got to look at Tommy Proctor's Farm Fresh. I found that I always like Candy Rides first time out of the box, so I found that one a little bit interesting. Have you seen that one in the morning?
He's okay. I didn't think he was anything special. I thought of the two first-timers, or of the several first-timers coming out of here. I thought Jenny's Rocket might be a little bit better. Farm Fresh hasn't done anything spectacular. Matter of fact, in her last gate work, and I'm going to have to look this up real quick, she actually was beaten by the filly that Terry Pompey ran here the other day, and it was no match. Terry's filly, I'm trying to remember. I think that is. I've seen so many works. I got to just look this up and double check it. But I believe they were in the same gate set. So, but again, like I said, of the two, Jenny's Rocket, I thought her last race was excellent. It was her best work out of several that she's had, so maybe it just means she's coming around. But it's a tough race. I mean, you got Gratitude, first-time Lasix out of Chasing Gracer first time out. Creative Spirit ran well first time out, and my Miss Sophie apparently is working okay up there for Todd Pletcher. Tasmona has been scratched.
There's a lot of maiden races on this card before the stakes, Mike, and we should also mention, I suppose, there's a race that some people may gloss over a little bit because it's for elder maidens, but it does feature Successful Luck for Pat Byrne and the Sanfords, this one being the half-sister to Blind Luck.
Yeah, I didn't really know what to do with this horse. I think I wound up picking her second in here just off the breeding. I actually took another Marty Wolfson horse here, Vita Vittoria, who's trained really well since joining Marty's barn. But Successful Luck, obviously a big question mark. And previous, ran well first time, and he gets first-time Lasix today, turning back in distance, but has been away. So, hard to say whether he'll need a race or not.
Another maiden race in here that needs to be noted because there's an interesting sibling tie-in. The 9th race is 1 1/8 miles on the grass, and here is Bill Mott with a Claiborne Dillschneider homebred, Sward. And if people aren't looking closely, it's Leia's brother.
Yeah, no, I saw that myself, but this race is there's no standouts in here. I had trouble with this one. I think if people are playing the pick 5s, pick 6, whatever sequences, or the pick 4, that you might want to take a big spread in here. But I think I did have Sward in my top picks.
Mike, the 3 stakes, of course, starts early in the card with the Hurricane Birdie. We talked on Friday on radio, and Groupie Doll, as much as we all love her, she feels like a big bet against today.
I wouldn't say she's a big bet against, but I think Heartstealer, if she gets the right trip, can beat her. I mean, Groupie Doll on paper is, she's won 2 Breeders' Cups, 4 Grade 1s, and there isn't another horse in the field that's, I think, won a Grade 3. So obviously on class, she's just an absolute stick-out, and if she can get any kind of trip from the rail, she's supposed to win. But that being said, she's had some really good works here, and she's had some okay works here. It's hard to say how she's going to come back off this layoff. She didn't. I don't know if this is her favorite track either. I mean, they took her home here last year after she was here for a while training. She's done okay. I mean, like I said, it looks like a 2-horse race. I would think, though, if you're looking for value in here, Heartstealer certainly has a chance to beat her. But she's the class. There's a big class gap in between those two.
You mentioned Narvaez at the big 139-1 price. For those of you that have been utilizing Mike's and Mike Vessey's Clocker report, the DRF Clocker reports, well, you were hip to Narvaez. Going to need all the help you can get in terms of the Gulfstream Park Turf Handicap and the Don in terms of what you guys have been watching. And, of course, there are some horses out of here that are working up at Payson. So we have a little bit of a mystery when it comes to those. Mike, give us the late double, the Gulfstream Park Turf Handicap and the Don.
Well, I think Summer Fun is the best horse in the Gulfstream Park handicap, Gulfstream Park Turf Handicap. The problem is it's a little bit like the race yesterday. There's not a lot of pace in here. It was the same scenario we faced in the Fort Lauderdale. Tetra Dracum, made an easy lead, looked like he was ready to draw off, turn in for home. But Summer Fun is just a better horse, got the seam, and once he got clear, he was able to wear Tetra Dracum down. I was talking to Chris Clement yesterday, and he agreed with me that it looks like the same scenario could develop today with Tetra Dracum loose on the lead, and he may have to, run him down again. You still got to get yourself a trip in these races. A mile and an eighth, probably a better distance for him than for Tetradrachm, or at least for his chances of running Tetradrachm down. I think that could be the race again, even though you have, Imagining in here and Boisterous in here and Amira's Prince. Amira's Prince is coming off the long layoff and will probably be forwardly placed, coming in fresh as he is. I think there's a lot of ways you could go. You can make cases for a lot of horses, but I still think Summerfront's the best horse if he gets a trip.
And the Don, Mike, final thoughts.
If Will Take Charge wins, congrats to him. He's the class of the field, no doubt, but I think he is vulnerable in here. First time coming back, first time over the track, making a long trip from Oaklawn. I was between River 7 and Revolutionary. I went with River 7 because of the possible pace advantage he's going to have. There's not much speed in this race either. I look for he and Leah to be out front. Hopefully you avoid a speed duel. And the track is still very fast this morning, and maybe that'll be enough of an edge. Revolutionary ran that huge race. I told everybody, like I said, after Falling Skies' performance, now Revolutionary's performance last month and his comeback win is going to be embellished a little bit. That 93 buyer, I wouldn't be surprised if in future PPs in this horse, you see that buyer elevated again because of what Falling Sky did yesterday, and then maybe be a triple-digit number. I think it was a better race than most people think. Revolutionary is a classy horse, so I'm looking for River 7 and Revolutionary to maybe pull the upset over Leah, and Will Take Charge, and I just don't know what to do with Romanche.
Well, we know what to do, and we need opinions on Gulfstream. Mike Welch, thanks so much. Looking forward to the action from Hallandale.
Thanks, guys. Mike
Welch, Seth, and invaluable. And in fact, talk about the Clocker Report. It's amazing. He does it, he and Mike Vesey, the one problem with South Florida between Calder, Gulfstream, Palm Meadows, Palm Beach Downs, and Payson Park. You got 5 facilities, and you got some very big names up at Payson. Clement and Mott, particularly, and it makes it a little bit mysterious. But boy, if you had read yesterday's report, they raved about Narvaez and how he was coming into the race, and then he runs absolutely huge. He and Reveron are those 2 old-fashioned Calder hard knockers that I always like.
No question about it. All right, we'll take our next break. When we come back, we'll touch in with Rich Migliore. He's down at Gulfstream, in fact, for that Jockey Club series that kicks off this afternoon on Fox Sports 1. So we'll check in with him right after this. I'm Seth Merrill. Join me weekdays at 10 for Racing Across America. We'll look at important races from around the country, get insight from top handicappers and analysts, and preview the upcoming week in racing. That's Racing Across America, weekdays at 10, right here on the OTB TV network.
I didn't want to get just any degree after high school.
Horse racing has always been my passion.
I was already a lawyer.
When I was young, my dad took me to the races. The sound of the crowd. I still remember.
I'm 40, and I don't want to stay in a career I don't love.
I want to follow my passion.
Follow your passion at the University of Arizona Racetrack Industry Program.
Wagering at CapitalOTBBet.com is as easy as 1, 2, 3. 1. Capital Bet TV, the fastest and easiest online wagering experience where you can monitor 5 different tracks simultaneously. 2. Capital Bet Express. Its straightforward program layout and interactive handicapping information lets you build your wager quickly and efficiently. And 3. Capital Bet Pro, designed especially for the professional horse player. CapitalOTBBet.com. Log on today.
Fascinated by the world of horse racing? Interested in honing your handicapping skills? Class is in session. Night school, Monday nights. Easy to access online. It's free, interactive, and informative for the casual and serious race fan. Horse Player Now Buzz. Live horses to watch emailed to you daily. Our eyes, your prize. Night school in the Buzz. Visit horseplayernow.com for details.
I'm Jeff Carl. Join me Saturdays and Sundays at 9 for the Handicappers Report. We'll handicap the top tracks across the country and help you prepare for the weekend in racing. That's the Handicappers Report, weekends at 9, only here on the OTB TV network.
It is Sunday, and a new era kicking off on the Fox Sports 1 network. The Jockey Club Tour on Fox will showcase the Don, will also certainly give us the Gulfstream Park Turf Handicap, and I'm sure on tape delay they'll show Groupie Doll's final race, the Hurricane Birdie. And to help with the analysis and to celebrate this new era, Rich Migliori of the New York Racing Association, HRTV, and so many other things it's hard to keep track of. Meg, good morning.
Good morning. It's a beautiful day down here in Florida. Nice little reprieve from the New York winter.
Well, we're going to get a reprieve from absences of racing on television later today. And, of course, this is aimed at a wider audience, Rich. And a lot of what the Jockey Club promised and what Fox, Mike Mulvihill have talked about is presenting the game in a little bit of a new light, taking advantage of these spots to teach people how to bet, what the game is all about when it comes to wagering their dollars.
Yeah, I think it's a great mix. I love the team that's been put together with Andy Serling and Simon Bray handling the handicap, and Greg Wolf as the host, Alyssa Ali as the reporter, and me as the racing analyst. I just think we're going to come from some different perspectives, but everybody very knowledgeable in their own area. And, I kind of was really feeling good about it last night. We all had dinner together, and we were kicking around ideas and talking about the races. And I think that's maybe going to be the biggest strength, Steve, is that we're going to actually be, we're all racing fans besides, so we're going to be bringing it from that perspective.
Talk a little bit about what you were looking forward to as this assignment. You were obviously plenty of experience when it came to the HRTV, and that has to give you a good base and a high confidence level. Also, the work that's gone on the last few years at NYRA. Talk about getting in front of the camera on a national basis.
It's funny, Steve. I just never really thought much about it. When I went to work for HRTV, actually even before I went to work for NYRA, they handed me a microphone, and I went out there and started talking about a subject that I think I'm pretty knowledgeable about and I'm very passionate about. So that kind of came easy, although I look back now on some of my early stuff with HRTV, and I don't know how they stuck with me. I just think it was, you got to get used to so many things, somebody talking in your ear in the IFB, but NYRA really honed that, especially hosting the Dark Day simulcast shows. So I even got some hosting experience with that, and really, I feel very comfortable about this, very relaxed. I hope they don't pull a Cindy Brady when the red light goes on.
Well, and of course, Rich, the nice part about this assignment doesn't look like anybody is going to be able to spin you and steal your mount.
No. Hey, so some broadcasting gigs have been stolen like mounts too, but at least for this year and this series, I'm pretty locked in, and I really, like I said, I love the team, and I'm really looking forward. I think we got some great races we're going to cover today, and certainly going on down the line. I know that some people have questioned some of the races in the series, but I think we're really bringing a full mixed bag and kind of introducing or showing people all different types of racing, from 2-year-olds to grass horses to dirt horses, 3-year-olds on the Triple Crown Trail. It's fun and exciting to be a part of something in the fruition of it.
And, Rich, I don't think it's Cindy Brady. I think it's Ralph Cramden. Don't say Peloponnese on the air. Keep away from that. But, Rich, give us some of your thoughts on the Don this afternoon. We just had Mike Welch on, and he thought it might be worth taking a little bit of a shot against Will Take Charge. I did the handicapping show earlier. Mike Welch thought River 7 was interesting. I'm going with the other horse that had a very nice race just a few weeks ago right here at Gulfstream, Lee. I'm going to take a little bit of a roll of dice with Lee. I got Will Take Charge right underneath, but I think Will Take Charge coming over from Oaklawn, where they've had some weather issues. If there's a race this year that maybe it's worth taking a shot against, I'll take a slight shot against. I have him right underneath. But what are your thoughts on the Don?
Well, Seth, you'll see later on if you watch the show, that's exactly how the track is graphic, the way I laid out the race. I think Lee's lone speed. I think he's going to control the race. I think he's going to be, hounded some by Romance. River 7 should be lurking right in behind them. And I think Will Take Charge is going to run out of racetrack. I think he's vulnerable today for a number of the reasons you're saying. One of the things, too, I don't like horses going from a colder climate to a warmer climate. And it is very warm here and very humid. and I just think it affects horses adversely. So I think he's got several things stacked up against him: the layoff, a speed-favoring surface with a short stretch, probably missed some training days down at Oaklawn because of the weather, and then coming from that warmer, colder climate to the warmer climate. So I think Lee is going to take him on a merry chase, and I think we'll take charge of run well, but he'll run at a racetrack.
You know, Rich, got to also take advantage before we let you go. Dave Grenig was with us earlier. We talked about the announcement this week back at Ozone Park. Martin Panza crafting a absolute bonanza day for Belmont. And one aspect of this that we weren't going to talk about with Dave is something that people probably haven't thought about. That is riders. And a 10-stake card, yes, it's a lot like Breeders' Cup, but gee, you got to think that that's a very intense kind of a day. Talk about your reaction to the news this week.
Well, I think it's great. I think it's going to catch people's attention, and that's what we need to do. I mean, our sport is so great, and we love it so much. But if we don't get it out and grab people's attention where they pay attention to it, we're never going to get them back into the fold. So I think this is a way of doing that. It's almost, like hitting them over the head with it. Hey, this is the greatest day of racing aside from, or the richest day of racing aside from the Breeders' Cup. It might even be a better day of racing. And I love it in every respect. As a rider, Steve, you go into a day like that, you hope you ride 13 races because the other 3 races are $100,000 allowance races. I'll be tired the next day, but let me ride every race that day and have some chances because it's a day to make a lot of money. What I'd like to say is it's a day that a rider could have a good year.
There you go. Well, I'm anxious, obviously, for that and how it plays out, and we're anxious for this afternoon's broadcast, Fox Sports 1, that will present the Jockey Club Tour, and Rich Migliori, Andy Serling, Greg Wolf, Alyssa Ali, and Simon Bray, your team. Get familiar with them. They'll be coming to you 9 times this particular session this year, and then next year as many as 20, it looks like, and beyond. Rich, congratulations. Looking forward to today's telecast.
Thank you guys so much. Thanks for having me on. I look forward to seeing you soon.
Rich Migliori and the Jockey Club Tour on Fox.
All right, we only got a couple minutes left, so let's just blow through quickly some of this action out at Santa Anita and just recap that, because, of course, there was a couple of notable upsets yesterday. The probably most notable of those was the San Antonio. We'll pick that up coming right out of the gate. Number 5, Game On Dude, obviously the 30 cents to the dollar favorite, and he is going to tangle early with Blue Skies and Rainbows, and essentially that's what sets up the closing effort late by Blingo, who winds up winning at 15-1 for the Zenyatta connections of Jerry Moss and John Sheriffs.
Watch carefully. There you go. And you see right away that Game On Dude does not break as sharp as he normally does. And here Smith has got no choice but to not really ask, but he certainly is giving him his free rein and his head. And instantly, Blue Skies and Rainbows. We talked to Mike Welch about his report. National Turf, Andy Harrington wrote conclusively that Blue Skies and Rainbows was absolutely full of himself these last couple of works, and that he expected him to be almost rank. And Andy Harrington warned about this from Blue Skies and Rainbows. So it did set up the potential for this breakneck duel, and now they're together on the backstretch, and everybody else can just let their horse get into a gentle beat. And Aaron Greider, who of course on Kaleidoscopio came from 75 lengths back in the Breeders' Cup Marathon a couple of years ago, Greider isn't even in the picture right now with Blingo, the John Sheriff's Jerry Moss trainee. And now you think Game On Dude is in even deeper water as he's confronted on the outside by Gary Stevens. And you could tell right now that the race is over for Game On Dude.
Yeah, you were looking at around the turn and coming into the stretch for him to make a big move, but it was just one of those situations where the pace played against him, and you had 2 horses that are kind of need for the lead types. They went out there, they banged it out, 22 and change, 46 and change. 110 and change. And coming down the stretch, Blingo is going to go by them all, again at 15-1.
Meantime, down on the rail, watch Imperative. I said Stevens, I meant Kent DeSormo. DeSormo on Imperative, who was an even bigger price at 26-1. This horse, who's a former claimer, 50,000 claimer, he runs a huge race here. And gosh, you got to be, feel good about it if you're George Papadromo, but you couldn't have asked for more, but Aaron Greider comes away. This is a big upset. It sets off those $20 show prices that you love.
Oh, absolutely. The old bridge jumpers go down in flames. We'll watch the San Marcos stretch run. It will be the 5-2 favorite, Vagabond Shoes, making a nice stretch run to get up late to win this one over 19-1 Sea Sage.
This was a spectacular group of horses. And talking about workouts, Vagabond Shoes does not like to work out on the dirt at all. And he now, at the age of 7, he's become a bit of a refusenik in the mornings. He's been propping and wheeling and refusing to work some days. And so it brought just a hint of question about where he stood going into this race. Lucayan was a bit of the now horse. That's who I ended up picking, and Vagabond Shoes I used as the obvious, but Sea Sage was certainly a horse that was a lot of fun. This ended up being a bonanza, a $375 try for $1. This was a spectacular race. Waiting for the video here, and you're going to see Vagabond Shoes under Victor Espinoza. John Sadler has a very big day. Right now, Vagabond Shoes is rallying from the outside. He's the 2 horse. You see him right there with the white blaze, and getting busy is Espinoza, and you can tell right here he's moving best of everybody, and you got a handful of horses behind that are going to photo out for everything else. Lucayan arrives on the scene way too late under Mike Smith, who did not have such a banner day yesterday at Santa Anita. The turf division shaping up very nicely off of last week's Arcadia with winning prize, and Neil Drysdale, who is pretty resurgent. But John Sadler sets up this win for a pretty big double as we turn our attention to Candy Boy and the Bob Lewis.
Yeah, and obviously all eyes here were on Midnight Hawk, 6-5. The Baffert horse has been getting a lot of attention. I just thought Midnight Hawk, as you say, Mike Smith, I'm wondering if coming out of that loss on Game On Dude maybe got a little bit anxious, comes up on the outside and gives Midnight Hawk a little further to travel perhaps. The other half of the uncoupled Baffert entry, Shitu at 9-2, I thought was a good second, but Candy Boy, the number 1 horse, pretty nice run down the stretch here for Candy Boy. And I think, again, these are all lightly raced horses so far on the Derby Trail. All Candy Boy came in with 5 career starts, but I think these all are horses that are now kind of having the ability to show that they're moving forward at the right time.
What's nice about Candy Boy, you can see there, it's not that he has a brilliant speed, and you can see that Stevens is absolutely confident in deep stretch that he's going to win this race. If you watch it again, you watch the replay when you get a chance, because it's kind of interesting. There's a point where Candy Boy feels like he's going to start addressing the leaders, and then he idles a little bit, and then he eases outside and then starts his run. This is clearly a horse who is going to be very serious. 96 buyer in this spot, and Sadler all along has been confident about him. He emerged in that futurity. You watch him here. See, he's behind the horses and gets a couple of right-handers. Now Stevens gets to riding him, and he's not explosive per se. He's just one of these steady, cruising speed type horses. That translates well at 1 1/8 and at 1 1/4. If you're a Candy Boy fan, and I hope Gary Stevens got a lot of you last week on this show to jump aboard, because he's clearly going to be one of the ones as we move into the serious portion of spring.
And again, the nice ride in the San Antonio on Imperative by Kent DeSormo. I'm wondering how long it takes before he's out there permanently.
I think that it seems pretty inviting. And I got to say, right now, that whole riding colony, Martin Petroza got very badly hurt the other day. He's on the shelf. But the riding colony out, I've been playing Santa Anita a lot. And I got to say, it's really fun. I've really enjoyed
the kid. We were talking this week on the show. The Van Dyke, the apprentice, who out there, there just haven't been a lot of apprentices over the past few years, but he's one worth paying attention to.
How about the new apprentice yesterday? Was that with Aubrey Marat? Or was it the Chatterpaw? I'm going to draw a blank. Not Wookie. We're going to be calling him Wookie undoubtedly. But you've got I've got it here somewhere. You've got this another new face at Aqueduct to get familiar with. And Trevor McCarthy, by the way, how about McCarthy up here riding more and more often in New York?
I mean, the apprentices, you went on in Maryland, they're always good. So Trevor McCarthy, but Taylor Rice in New York has just been phenomenal so far.
Wari, here he is. Wari, riding today for Aubrey Marat, $83,000 carryover, as Seth mentioned. It is Andre Shivnarine Wari. So 7-pounder, new face yet again, another. The landscape in New York dotted with apprentices.
All right, we got to wrap things up.
Why? Let's just stay all the way through the afternoon.
We should do one of those after shows that's on the internet. Everybody does that now.
We'll be
Although I don't know whether they want to see what happens.
We'll be joined. Bill Maher is going to join us on the overtime on Loose on the Lead.
All right, that's going to wrap things up. Don't forget, if you have questions, comments, suggestions, we would love to hear from you. looseonthelead@yahoo.com. looseonthelead@yahoo.com. Or go over, visit the Facebook page as well. That'll wrap things up. Loose on the Lead every Sunday morning from 10 until 11 a.m. Seth Merrill from EchoDaily.com. Steve Bick from Sirius and XM's At the Races.
Sometimes till 11:04.
Yeah, it was, again, that was a general. That was a guideline, not a rule. All right, that'll wrap things up. We'll see you again next Sunday morning.
You're watching OTB TV, a service of Capital Off-Track Betting.